This is Don Brown, Republican candidate for United States Senate, here today not only to once again call out Senator Tom Tillis for attacking the president and his policies, but to call out Tillis's buddy and clone, Michael Whatley, for saying nothing about it. Now, 2 weeks ago, Tillis came out and actually went to Denmark to try to undermine the president's foreign policy on Greenland and told the Danes, don't worry about the president, that Congress won't cooperate. Went there with liberal Democrat Senator Chris Coon and Rhino Lisa Murkowski and others, undermining the president. I called Tillis out on it, and I called Mike Whatley out for sitting by silently. Mike said nothing, just nodded his head and let his buddy Tillis do what he wanted to do to undermine the president. Then last week, Tillis comes out and says Kristi Noem should be fired. Of course, he said she should be fired because these shootings in Minnesota, well, it turns out the second guy that got shot was a very violent left-wing agitator who actually attacked ICE agents before he got shot. But the point of the matter is, Tillis jumped the gun, and I came in and said not only should Kristi Noem not be fired, but she ought to get a raise because we shut the border down under the Department of Homeland Security and the United States military. We've closed immigrations coming in from the Darien Gap between Colombia and Panama, and we have made our streets safer. And so I'm saying Kristi Noem should not only not lose her job, she ought to get a raise. But Whatley sat back and said nothing when Tillis called for her firing. Where's your loyalty, Mike? You say Trump, 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 but you let your buddy Tillis get away with ravaging the president and say nothing. And now here's strike three. It involves the Federal Reserve. You see, the United States national debt is a ticking time bomb that will take us down if we don't get it under control. When I started running for office about a year ago, it went through 37 trillion and now it's exceeding 38 trillion and is exploding every day. This is under responsibility and on the shoulders of the United States Congress. The president is aware of the problem. But one of the problems we have with the debt is now the second largest line item in the U.S. budget is paying off the national debt. And that is in part because the Federal Reserve continues to keep rates high. The higher the rates, the larger the interest load is on the government to try to pay this debt down or at least keep it under control. Trump knows that. He's been pushing the Fed to bring it down. He's nominated Kevin Warsh as the new Fed chairman. But what does Tillis do? Tillis says he will oppose Kevin Warsh. He's going to oppose the president's nominee for Fed chair. So, one, he undermines the president on Greenland. Two, he calls for Kristi Noem to be fired. Three, he wants to undermine the president's and oppose the president's nominee for Fed chair. And what does Whatley do? He sits back and does nothing. North Carolina Republicans need to understand that Whatley went to Raleigh almost a year ago in March of 2025 and endorsed Tillis while Tillis was still in the race. He sits back silently like a deaf and dumb lamb saying nothing when his buddy Tillis ravishes the president. Where do you stand, Mike? I can tell you where I stand. I stand with the president on his nominees. I stand with the president's policy on Greenland. I stand with Kristi Noem, and I stand with the nomination of Kevin Warsh as our next Fed chair. Matter of fact, as far as the Fed goes, the Fed raises these rates, understand, and the more they raise the rates, the more money they make themselves. And we're not allowed to audit them. That's got to change. I agree with Rand Paul and Ron Paul and others. The Fed should be audited. It was created by Act of Congress in 1913. Congress needs to rein it in. But Tillis is content to sit back and let the Fed do what it wants to do and attack the president. And Whatley sits back like his little silent cousin and doesn't say a word. I will say a word. I will support the president's nominee as Fed chair, and I will support reining in the Federal Reserve. I'm Don Brown. I will stand for the United States Constitution, for American independence, and for the state of North Carolina as your next senator, and I appreciate your support. Thank you, and God bless.
I'm Don Brown, and I approve this message.